You're gonna present at the conference a topic about cheating in chess. That's obviously very hot right now. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, I know you've spoken about it a lot on the pod, which
everybody's talking about it.
Everybody's talking about it. But that's kind of funny because do you remember the time when you couldn't really talk about it? Or not you couldn't talk about it, but you couldn't accuse someone. That was the worst thing to do. Do you remember there was like, I think it was maybe Mamadiarov who was sort of the first. He accused Dennis someone at Aeroflot. I think it was like quite some years ago now. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. And that was a big deal because everyone was like, oh, you can't just accuse without evidence.
Right.
And now there's been a cultural shift. It's a free for all. Well, at least for some people.
For online chess especially, yeah.
Yeah.
Which, maybe there's like also some sort of distinction, like FIDE doesn't get involved in online chess, chess.com or other websites don't get involved in over the board chess. And maybe FIDE doesn't see it as their place to sanction or to discipline people who have accused without evidence, I guess. I mean, it's hard to say what evidence really is in this case.
Yeah.
Besides hard evidence, but yeah, it looks like these kind of major players are staying in their own yard and not mixing too much.
Yeah.
There's also a case, a coach who accused a top women's player and got over the board event a few years ago and got banned by FIDE from coaching, from attending tournaments and so on.
Ah, right.
For maybe 6 months or so. So there are definitely some cases
He accused
of sanctions.
Bibisara, right?
I think he was Asabaeva,
Bibisara.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Because I think was it Sandu who was accused a long time ago as well?
By players in the tournament.
And there was that letter and it was a whole sort of thing. So
that was a bit unfortunate because I mean it definitely impacted her psychologically in the tournament. Whenever you're facing this type of accusations, and it's so difficult to play chess, right?
Yeah. And there were sanctions against some of the players, I think.
Some of the players.
Some of the players, or maybe very few, but definitely there were some sanctions taken.
I don't think anybody got suspended.
Oh yeah.
Did they?
Yes. One I'm sure of got either a 3-month or 6-month ban.
Really? Okay.
I think I remember that for the lead author of the letter or something. So
I guess it was like maybe a lot of players wrote in and maybe they just decided they can't ban everyone.
Yeah.
But yeah, now it's more or less a free-for-all, as you said. Everyone is throwing something at someone else.
Name of your paper is Cheating and Suspicion in Chess, Insights from a Control Tournament Experiment.
Yep.
Which one is that? What did you do?
So I've got a few projects related to cheating. One with chess.com, looking at sort of behavioral ways on their platform to discourage people. So there's obviously there's the stats side of things, and they got a lot of people working on that, very smart people. But as a sort of behavioral economist, I'm also interested in ways that discourage kids from sort of going down that road. There are always going to be some people who, a cheater's going to cheat. No matter what you do, this person's going to be a cheater. But for a large amount of people, their chess path will actually affect whether or not they ever start it, or once they start it, how they react to it. And so I'm sort of interested in if there are ways to try to discourage that, change the norms around it. But the one I'm going to present about, I think it's kind of cool. I ran an experiment. I've been saying experiment a lot, but I ran a real chess tournament. I put on a real chess tournament, but I called it the Cheating Challenge. And I had special rules, and so it was an 8-player double round robin. They didn't know who the other players were. And I said to them, before the round, you may get a message from me that says you have been designated a cheater for this game. So you're going to be a cheater. And during the game, I'm going to send you engine moves at moments that I think are critical. So far so good. You get to be a cheater. Sounds great. It's one-way communication, so it's a little bit like the Feller case at the Olympiad. Yes. So you don't know when it's coming, but at some point you might get a signal. But the twist is that at the end of the tournament, you can lodge accusations against any of your opponents in any rounds. And it's costly to do it. It costs you a point to lodge it. But if you're successful, you get the point back, plus you get an extra point. So you either lose a point if you're wrong, or you get +1 if you're right. And if someone accuses you of cheating and they're right, you lose 1.5 points. So you want to cheat, but you don't want to get caught as well. So I'm trying to emulate a real sort of situation as close as I can.
Was this an online tournament or OTB?
It was online, but it was controlled online. So they couldn't
They couldn't see each other. They didn't know who they're playing against each other. What were the ratings of the players?
Lowest was 1600 ELO. Highest was 2350. Was an IM. There was another who became an IM sort of shortly after the tournament. So there were sort of two around IM strength. There was a FM, a CM, down to 1600. Youngest 17, oldest 51, I think.
If you were asked to cheat, were you required to cheat, or could you abstain?
If your opponent accused you of cheating, even if you hadn't played any of the moves I sent you, you would still lose the points because you'd been designated a cheater. So it's imagine that you've got like a little device on you, but you decide I'm not going to listen to it, or you brought it into the room. So sorry. And,
How did you guys do it? How did you guys send the moves?
Because it was online, I sent it.
Just like text?
Just text, yeah. And if they communicated back, I said, sorry, it's only one-way communication. Because, I mean, I think we can sort of all agree here that, online cheating is a larger problem numerically, but there are people working on that side of things, and there's always a point that they won't be able to cross, but okay, that's another problem. But OTB cheating is something that I'm quite interested in because we have no idea of the scope of it. We have no idea how people's behavior and play changes when they're getting hints. So I was interested in that as well, like how your play changes when you're a cheater, but also if you suspect your opponent of cheating, how it affects your play. And then most importantly, how good are we at accusing people of cheating? I wanted to know that. Yeah.
So what was the result? Was there a good strategy? Were there people who were able to hide their cheating from their opponents, or was everyone more or less clear?
So in terms of the accusation success rate, it was 69% correct. So 50% would be chance. So it's better than chance, but not a whole lot better than chance. So then unpacking that a bit further, I also varied the amount of suggestions that I gave, kind of like randomly we say, because I wanted to see how that changes. If I give you just one move, if I give you two moves. So most people I gave between 2 and 10 moves. Some I gave like 20 moves. And I wanted to see whether your detection abilities changed. And so in addition to you accusing, I also said, okay, you're not going to lose money for this. Just tell me, what do you think is the probability that your opponent's cheating, and how confident are you that they're cheating? So I gathered all this sort of data. Whether I sent one move or 20 moves didn't affect your suspicions at all. The suspicions didn't vary with the number of moves, which is crazy.
Did people tend to, if you were to give 20 suggestions, would they tend to listen to all 20, or would they moderate it in some way?
Usually people played about 90% of the suggestions. 90%. Yeah. And if I'm giving a lot of them, most of the time they were taking, still 90%, but that's like a lot of moves basically. Yeah. But I guess like one thing that was really surprising to me, which I didn't expect, is that, so I did all these things to predict what's the likelihood that you will accuse your opponent. What increases your suspicion the most? And I thought it would be if the opponent plays fewer blunders, you suspect them more. Or if the opponent's center pawn loss is lower, you suspect them more, like things like that. Or if the opponent is lower rated but playing better, all these sort of combinations. None of those things predicted it. The number one thing that predicted whether you accuse is if you made more blunders in the game.
Okay, interesting.
So it's very subjective in a sense.
That's what I take from this, yeah.
Or could it be that if you play against someone who is cheating, that increases your likelihood of making blunders?
It could, particularly if it's in your head and if you're distracted. So the next thing to do, which I was going to do this afternoon, which I haven't done yet, is obviously I can see the moves when I first sent the first cheating suggestion. So I can look at the rate of blunders that you do before that point, which shouldn't be affected. And hopefully then I'll be able to tell. But my strong suspicion from what I'll find is that it is kind of an internal way of putting the blame somewhere else for your own bad play. So kind of like a projection bias. I'm playing badly. I don't want to, cognitive dissonance. I don't want to accept that it's my fault. So I know there's a chance my opponent's cheating. I subconsciously maybe increase my suspicion. And I think that's probably something that happens outside this experiment as well.
So yeah, that's what I was sort of going to lean into, because there's this idea that strong players, and especially the strongest players, have a sort of sense of, I mean, I kind of share this feeling a little bit, but of course I admit I'm probably biased, but definitely there is a large feeling that very strong players can feel if their opponent's cheating. Do you think that this is complete bogus for the most part?
Well, what I think doesn't matter. It's what the evidence says. And fortunately, I ran a second experiment. So this is a really nice way for me to segue into it. But I don't think that it's bogus. And first of all, when I've listened to this pod in particular, what I really appreciate about you and a few other strong players like you is that you kind of don't have this halo effect where I'm super good in one domain, therefore I must be good in lots of other domains. You kind of know when your experience could matter for a domain, and also you can recognize when it probably doesn't. So so that's a good thing. Not all your peers are like that, as you probably know, but we're all human, so that makes sense. Anyway, so the second reason that I ran this experiment was I now have 112 games where I know for certain whether one player was cheating or not and how much they cheated. Nobody's got a data set like that. So when Ken Regan runs his algorithm, or when Chess.com runs its stuff, they have incredible stats. Both of them have incredible stats. I've seen their analysis, but they don't have a great training data set. A lot of the time they're using things like the Feller games or something like that. But here we have it. So what I did next, and you may remember, you might have seen this online, I posted it for the Chess World.
I took the test.
Did you take the test?
I took the test. And my coach at the time, it was
Okay.
right around summer of last year, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so
Yep.
we were at a tournament and we both took the test.
Cool.
Well, we kind of collaborated, so it wasn't like we took it separately.
Yeah. You cheated in my test. I'm going to have to take you out of the data now. I'll just, for the viewers, I'll explain. So what you do when you sign up for this thing is you're given 7 of these games that were in the tournament. So you see the game, it's on the little chess.com screen, you can play through it. You see the evaluation after each move, you see the move times, you can take it to the analysis board if you want, and then we say, what do you think the chances are that black was cheating? Do you think black was a cheater or not? So you're given 7 of these, and 10,000 people took this survey around the world. So I got people from a chess.com rating of 100 to, I don't know if Magnus took it or not, so you'd probably be my strongest player. But
I'm not sure if I entered my rating accurately.
Right.
So, but hopefully I did.
There were I think there were 2 players who entered 2,800 as their rating. One of them I know was 2,800 at the time. And I know who it was, so it wasn't you. I don't know what you entered, so I don't know whether the other one was just somebody
I just can't remember.
But we sort of whittled down the sample to those who provided either their FIDE ID or their Lichess user or their chess.com user. So we can break it down to about 4,000 where we're super comfortable with that data set. I don't know whether we cut you and your coach out of that or
We
not.
didn't put any evidence that we were, of who we were. So,
Right,
so it
okay.
Probably took us out of it.
Probably took you out, yeah. But yeah, this was really interesting because, on the one hand, it's a really difficult assignment because you're given 7 independent games. It's not like you're following player X the whole way through. But on the other hand, with a sample that big, you'd still think that you could do better than chance on average, or there will be certain types of people who do better than chance. And so the 2 main results are, first, we really suck at this. We all really suck at this. I think the average is something like 53 or 54%, where 50% is, flipping a coin. Yeah. The second thing is that experience matters a lot. So the more years you've played chess, the better you are at detecting this. And that's correlated with rating. But if you look at the 2, rating versus experience is kind of the dominant factor.
So that kind of answers your question, yeah.
So
as a strong player, you probably have a high likelihood to...
But it was around 53%.
I think ones with 10 plus years of experience got up to 58%, 59%.
Still not very accurate.
Still not as good as the players in the tournament. So the players in the tournament had that feeling during the game, which I think helped a fair bit. And they also spent more time on the task. Whereas on the online one, I don't know how long you spent, but most people spend an average of about 2 minutes per game. The ones who spent more, the ones who spent 5+ minutes per game, they did better as well. So it kind of says the more experience you've got in chess and the more time you spend on the task, the better you can do. But I don't know if that's what people do in the real world.
I think we took about 20 minutes total, and we were just kind of discussing
That's
the
not
number of
bad.
times and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did feel like it was difficult to get a grasp without actually being involved in the game. It's really difficult to judge from the side.
Yeah.
And that's why I when I see a game, let's say Entitled Tuesday, and maybe my feeling is it's really suspicious because someone is playing a lot of engine moves, right?
Yeah.
But I do feel like I have just a stronger feeling during the game, but sometimes the feeling also betrays me. I feel like my opponent is maybe cheating early on in the game, and then some bullshit happens later, and maybe I win the game, or we just start making massive mutual blunders. I'm like, okay, there's no way this was a game. But I had the feeling. I'm like, well, maybe my feeling doesn't count for much if it didn't predict what would happen for the rest of the game.
That's quite interesting, because imagine you got to a point where, you're losing now and you had that feeling and you decided just to resign rather than play on. Then you would have kept it, right? You would have kept the feeling saying, it's a cheater, because you wouldn't have been given that counter evidence at some point.
Yeah, I did try to change this like mentally, that I don't give up, because sometimes you get demoralized if you think you're facing someone who is cheating and they're beating you. But sometimes it does. I was kind of inspired by some players like Hikaru, who they're playing someone who's like much weaker, outplaying them constantly. Maybe the player's cheating, but then somehow they trick them in time trouble. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'm not as good as Hikaru at doing this, but if Hikaru can do it, then maybe I can also occasionally do it. And well, they say never resign. There's no nothing to gain from that. But yeah, it is a very. I did take the test, and also our success rate was like 3 out of 7. I think.
Yeah.
So it wasn't very good at all, and I was trying to understand, like, is it because I have no grasp over what it looks like cheating or what doesn't, or was it because I'm not personally invested in the games? But I figured that if I'm getting a low accuracy, then probably overall people are not guessing too well.
I think it's just a very hard task. Like, I think it's much harder than people recognize, and there are a few players, very strong players, who overestimate their ability to a significant degree. So we saw that also. We asked people their confidence that they had in their predictions, and you'd think that the more confident you are about it, the more likely you are to be correct, but that just doesn't hold. And there are some people who are just super overconfident, and that comes, unfortunately, with rating most of the time. Yeah, but it's interesting you said that during your games against people in Title Tuesday, you feel this sort of almost like helplessness. There's nothing I can do here, it's a cheater. I also interviewed all the players at the end of this tournament, and that was one of the number one things that came out of it, this feeling of like hopelessness, inevitability. They got really depressed. But then when I asked them, okay, well, how did you feel when you were cheating? And the longer the tournament went on, the more depressed they got as well, because they realized that it affected their play in their non-cheating games.
When they're not cheating.
They just didn't play as well anymore. And actually, I haven't analyzed this data yet, but during the games where they were waiting for moves, quite often they were playing poorly. So the increase in the quality of the games was coming from the cheating moves, but for the rest of the time they were just so distracted because they're just waiting, like, when's the move going to come, and also feeling a bit guilty.
That's very interesting, because you said that they didn't know when they will receive the moves. And that sort of applies with the new delay that we see in most major tournaments, because let's say you have a 30-minute delay. If you have an earpiece and you're waiting for those 30 minutes to like develop, and then you, let's say, spend 20 minutes on a move, let's say it's a bad move, right?
Yeah.
But you still get some feedback later on in the process. It's a very interesting, let's say, finding that they play worse whenever they expect the moves, but they don't know when they're going to get it.
Yeah. This is the other thing that kind of shocked me, because I think most strong players have always assumed that you only need 1 or 2 moves to make a huge difference. You'll get 100 ELO points if you just get 2 suggestions per game.
That's basically what.
That's my feeling.
Yeah. I think I've heard Vishy say that as well. I've heard you say it before. Yeah. And I also believe it to some extent, but that's a ceteris paribus thing we say in economics. So that's, if everything else is the same, that's what it means basically, then this will happen. The problem is that in a game where you know that you're getting moves, not everything's the same, because you're not playing your usual strengths. Now, I don't know, maybe cheaters get better at it over time, but I think still it's very, very difficult to play at your true level knowing that you're cheating and knowing that these moves are coming at some point.
Did the players know their opponent's rating in this one?
They were given a 100-point bin. So like they're somewhere between 1650 and 1750 or something like that.
Because you said that some of them were like 1600s, some of them were like 2300s. That's a huge gap, right? Was it more prevalent, let's say, in a game between a 2300 and an 1800, and the 1800 defeats the 2300? Did it happen? It did happen, yeah. And whenever you see those type of like differences, the higher rated player, is it more likely to accuse the other of cheating?
I thought that would happen, but actually there was no effect. So
Really?
rating seems to not play a role in it at all. I don't know why that is. I know that the very top player, the IM, got more and more depressed as the tournament went on. Really didn't enjoy it too much. And there was one game where he was the cheater, and I'd decided beforehand he was only going to get 2 suggestions because I was randomly doing, how many suggestions you get. He was only getting 2. I gave him 2 at what I thought were 2 critical moments, but it turned out that the game got more and more complex after that. He was just spending lots of time waiting for suggestions. They weren't coming. He fell to pieces, and so he lost the game as a cheater.
Lost that game.
Yeah,
he was a cheater.
Yeah. Fortunately, the opponent didn't accuse him because that would have been a double whammy as well. I think the opponent was like, "He can't be cheating in this one." But no, in the end, the rating didn't seem to matter. I mean, 1600 to 2350. Is it only a small snapshot of the whole range of chess players? So it might have been different if I had, 1,000s up to 2,600 or something.
Is it possible that because players knew that there was potential of cheating, and usually players don't think too much about it in most tournaments, that it could have created an unnatural atmosphere and affected, in a negative way, the player's normal play?
Could have done,
and
yeah.
Is it possible to recreate the experiment where you have a group of cheaters who know that they're cheating, that they're going to cheat, and a group of players who aren't going to cheat and don't know that anyone else will cheat?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that's a really smart suggestion. So the actual main academic point behind this was just to get those 112 games so I could use it in the big survey. So that was priority number 1. But the experiment was so cool to do that I would like to do it, in a bigger tournament, sort of get 50 players, 100 players, and have a little bit of deception. And deception is kind of one of those weird things in academic domains because of the ethics around it. Because, if I bring some people into play and I say, hey, it's a normal tournament, but actually there's cheaters, it's not clear whether that's ethical to them or not. But
have you pitched this to Chess.com? Let's say do cheating Tuesdays, where everybody knows that somebody will be cheating every single round.
Well, what Fabi's saying is that they can't advertise it to everyone. So some of the top players, they'll send it and say that it's a real Tuesday. And then the question is, how would those players feel afterwards, sort of getting duped? I'd have to run that by Eric and Danny to see what he thinks. They're very open to the idea of gathering evidence, which I think is a really good thing. But I would be very keen to see that, because you're absolutely right. That is a potential concern that, even though I tried to make it as close as possible to the real world, if you know there's a chance of there being a cheater, it's a little bit different to a tournament where, in theory, you also know there's a chance, but you don't really think about it.
So there's not a certainty.
Exactly. Yeah. So in this, you knew, well, you didn't actually know there was a chance. In theory, there was a chance that you never face the cheater. But the fact that I just told you beforehand, some of your opponents may be cheaters, might affect things. Yeah.
And this was online. Do you think it could be done over the board? A tournament like this over the board?
Yeah.
I think that would be cool.
Halloween costumes for everyone.
Well. Sure. Yeah. Why
oh no, you want to see the faces.
People would know that. Yeah. People would know that this is a cheating tournament. Let's say, and then
I think
basically the same thing, but over the board.
Yeah.
And then you see them. Maybe you can even include, I'm going to give you the moves, but I'm going to give it to you at the bathroom, for example. So,
but that
you're adding another layer.
That adds an element where there's a tell.
But everybody goes to the bathroom. Like, you wouldn't know who's going more. Yeah.
Yeah, but the spy equipment these days is so good that we could be sitting right now, and I could be, all the answers that I could be saying, I could have, my answers would be better in that case, but still, I could have been getting these. So that would be possible. Actually, one thing I did in the survey, this is more of an academic-y sort of thing, but not everybody saw the same survey. I had tiny tweaks to the instructions. And one of the tweaks was that half the people saw this was a tournament and it was implied that it was over the board. The other half saw it and it was explicitly said it was online. And I thought that more people would level accusations or say, yes, cheater, if they thought it was online.
No
difference.
Really?
Yeah, which is interesting. It's